We know that a typical computer system is associated with some primary hardware resources such as processor, working memory or RAM, and disk storage. Also, there can be network and other resources as well. Suppose we have 10 computer systems. Each system physically owns or each system is associated with its own hardware resources such as RAM, disk storage, processors, and so on. Suppose each system is having a 32 GB RAM. Going on, these are some of the facts or some of the issues observed. We bought all these hardware resources and we paid for them, but these systems are utilizing only below 20% of these resources. For example, suppose system 1 is utilizing only up to 4 GB RAM. System 2 is utilizing only up to 6 GB RAM. So none of the system is utilizing above 20% of any of the resources. So we bought all these resources, we paid for them, and those resources remain underutilized. Also, since each system is individually associated with its hardware resources, these resources are to be managed and maintained individually. Power and cooling, data security and firmware upgrades, hardware security, everything should be maintained and managed for individual system. This creates some overhead for the managing personnel and also there is some cost overhead. Finally, the space required for these hardware resources is more. Now we can move to the concept of virtualization. We shall bring all these hardware resources to a single pool. We can make a single large server which equals all these resources. For example, instead of 10 32 GB RAM, we can have a single RAM of size 320 GB. Similarly, we can have a single large disk which can meet the disk space requirements of all these systems. Similarly, processors and all the resources within a single server. Now, if we execute a piece of software called hypervisor or VMM on top of this server, then we will be able to create multiple virtual machines on top of this single physical machine by sharing the resources of this physical machine among these virtual machines. If we execute a piece of software called hypervisor on top of this server, we can create multiple virtual machines on top of this physical machine by sharing the resources of the physical machine among the virtual machines. For example, suppose we created 10 virtual machines for our 10 users. Now these 10 virtual machines will act like our previous 10 computer systems. Each user from his desktop can access his corresponding virtual machine, and each virtual machine will be allocated with its demanded resources. Let 32 GB RAM is allocated to each VM. Now, each user will have a feel as if he physically owns a 32 GB physical memory. Similarly, each user will have a feel as if he physically owns those resources allocated to his VM, but actually he is working in a virtual environment and those resources he thinks he owns are actually shared resources. So here we can have a very better utilization of the resources. For example, suppose we have got a new user request. In this old system, we need to buy and set up all the hardware resources for him. This will take time. Not only that, we are trying to procure a new set of hardware resources while all these resources remain underutilized. But with this concept of virtualization, what we need to do is to just create a new virtual machine for that new user and then share all these resources among all these virtual machines. The 320 GB RAM will be shared among these 11 virtual machines. Since none of the VM is completely utilizing the 32 GB RAM allocated for them, this sharing will never create any issues. So each user will feel as if he owns a 32 GB RAM, but actually the 320 GB RAM is shared among the 11 virtual machines. Thus here we can have a very better utilization of the resources. Not only that, the initial hardware cost can be reduced. Here even if we do not have 320 GB RAM, with this concept of virtualization, we can support all these systems. By this way, we can reduce the initial hardware cost. Also, in each virtual machine, we can run any operating system. It means by virtualization, we can run multiple operating systems on a single server or on a single machine. So we can have both Linux and Windows on the same machine. Then the space required for the hardware resources can be reduced. Now, since all these resources are maintained at a single point of location, managing them is easier. The managing overhead can be reduced, and also cost overhead with respect to power and cooling can be reduced. So generally, virtualization is a computer architecture technology by which multiple virtual machines are multiplexed in the same hardware machine. And this is one of the important concepts which led to the concept of cloud computing. So in the next video, we shall extend this concept of virtualization to the concept of cloud computing.